Tesla just seriously upset some Cybertruck reservation holders, but I actually love this. Tesla will sue you if you try to flip your low-end Cybertruck. Early Cybertruck owners will be prevented from reselling their vehicles until a year after they take delivery, according to an update to Tesla's motor vehicle purchase agreement. If a situation comes up where you have to resell the car, Tesla demands that you give it first right of refusal for the sale before putting it up to the public. And if you do resell your car and don't tell Tesla about it, the company threatens to sue you for $50,000 or more and may not sell you any future vehicles. Sounds fair to me. But this will definitely be bad news to some Cybertruck owners. I personally know of a guy that has more than 10 reservations, so he will see this and he won't be happy about it. But it does seem that if you do want to sell the vehicle back to Tesla, Tesla will buy it at a fairly reasonable price. It would be at the purchase price listed on your final price sheet, less 25 cents per mile driven, plus reasonable wear and tear, and the cost to repair the vehicle to Tesla's used vehicle cosmetic and mechanical standards. However, some people are raising some questions about this agreement. Matt Smith says, I'm no lawyer, but does Tesla actually have legal grounds to prohibit the resale of someone else's private property? There has been a court case here with John Cena, the actor, who was one of the first to get a Ford GT in 2017, but resold the car within a few months in violation of a clause in Ford's purchase agreement disallowing resale for 2 years. Ford sued him, and the case ended up being settled with an apology by Cena and donation of proceeds to charity. Also, for example, the Hummer EV originally had a 12-month no resale provision, later lowered down to 6 months. So yeah, I think Tesla will have no problem enforcing it if Tesla actually wants to enforce it. Although you can make an argument that these vehicles are quite rare, they are really expensive, but the Cybertruck is going to be a mass produced vehicle, not some limited edition. So maybe it would be different for the Cybertruck. Either way, it is extremely clear that Tesla would probably sue anyone who tries to resell Cybertrucks. And just that threat alone is probably enough to discourage resellers from reselling Cybertrucks. Because, you know, courts are pretty slow, so if Tesla only really wants to do it for 1 year, even if supposedly, let's say, they actually end up losing in court, it would still accomplish what Tesla basically wanted. Scare away as many resellers as possible. But in my opinion, Tesla can enforce this contract because if you can enforce this sort of thing for rare vehicles, I think you can enforce it for the Cybertruck too, especially in the first year. And what Tesla can definitely do, which is what they say they will do if you try to do this, Tesla will never sell you another vehicle ever again if you try to resell a Cybertruck. And this probably means even if you buy a Tesla vehicle from a third party later, let's say you buy a used Tesla, you will probably never be able to actually get it serviced by Tesla if the vehicle is under your name. So if you try to resell a Cybertruck, you better make up your mind that, yeah, you definitely don't want to ever own a Tesla vehicle in the future. I actually support this initiative from Tesla, and I haven't seen anyone really to disapprove. I'm talking about Tesla stock investors and big fans of Tesla. Remember people saying once legacy OEMs start pumping out EVs, Tesla is doomed. Well, let's take a look at what's going on with the Cadillac Lyriq. This is a GM vehicle with a $57,000 MSRP. Here's someone who bought a new Cadillac Lyriq and returned it 12 hours later. And by returning, this guy meant after a little persuasion and legal threats, they took the car back and gave me a 100% refund. Here's another person saying, I'm going to keep it short so I don't bore you with my long saga about the Lyriq's constant issues. So here is the short list. And there are more issues and more people complaining. It doesn't stop here, but we're gonna move on now. Here is the benchmark global weighted average battery cell price. Cell prices have fallen 27% year over year. We are still slightly higher than where we were back here in 2020, but the trend has clearly reversed now and the trend is down, which will accelerate the transition to EVs. This is unfortunate for Mercedes Mercedes. Their EV is on fire here, just like their company. Overall, certainly EVs catch on fire less often than gas-powered vehicles. I'm curious if it's the same for Mercedes. I assume it's the same. This is all in China, and someone says that this may be an insurance scam. I mean, dealers have to get them off the lot somehow. Falcon has delivered over 1,000 tons to orbit this year, a world record. SpaceX is just completely dominating. This is significantly more than any country has launched with their entire rocket fleet in a year. Second is peak Soviet Union at 500 tons. For a present-day comparison, the rest of the world has delivered 250 tons only to orbit so far this year, mostly by China. SpaceX has delivered 4 times that. If you thought that Tesla was dominating the EV space, SpaceX pretty much owns the space industry at this point. And it is very likely, very possible that Starlink, which is part of SpaceX, is going to become a public company. I personally believe there's going to be a lot of money made with SpaceX. Elon just made a political comment, and this one is getting some attention. Did they just tear down an American flag on Veterans Day in America? Am I understanding this correctly? Elon's comment was left under this post that said, "It's time for mass deportations from the USA, send them all back." And that post quoted this post, which said, "In New York, cultural enrichers tear down US flag and replace it with a Palestinian flag. Where are the US patriots?" I think putting up one flag is one thing, but then tearing down the US flag while you are putting up other flags is unbelievable. I personally really like this news. Exxon is set to unveil its long-awaited lithium strategy on Monday with an announcement that it aims to start production of the EV battery metal by 2026. So, oil producers that want to survive, they need to change their strategy. They need to look at, what will the EV market need? And then produce that. This is bad news for us Canadians. You know how Tesla added that clause to prevent flipping in the US? No such clause has been added in Canada. So this means Tesla has no immediate plans to sell the Cybertruck in Canada, whereas deliveries in the US start in about 2.5 weeks. It's a bummer. I was hoping to at least rent a Cybertruck maybe, but I would need to go to the US to do that. I guess I could drive to Seattle. It's not too far. Look at what's going on in Sweden with Tesla. This is a translation of what was in that previous image. If Tesla doesn't do as we say, we will turn off the electricity, water, and internet. Total isolation awaits Tesla. They have no rights or justification for their actions. Follow Swedish practice or leave the country. This is because Tesla does not want its employees to join a union, and Tesla's employees think that Tesla pays them more money, so they themselves actually don't want to follow what the union tells them to do, which is why many Tesla employees refused to go on strike when the union ordered them to do so. Here's what Nicholas, a Swedish Tesla stock investor, says. "This looks like war against Tesla and has never been about the workers' rights or salaries. It's about joining the system, which is not required by law, even though 90% of the workers in Sweden are part of some sort of collective agreement. But why can't Tesla belong to the 10%? Tesla's workers are perfectly happy." He continues and says that the rumors are starting to grow here in Sweden that all of this is initiated by other car companies and dealers in Sweden to stop Tesla, I guess, from competing against them and to get Tesla to leave the country, ideally, or weaken Tesla's competitive position. It seems like this fight is just starting. But Tesla is in a pretty good position. The ports basically went on strike against Tesla, and now Tesla is importing the vehicles into Sweden from, I think, Norway, or using the land border. So there's not much that all of these people can really do against Tesla. Troy spent some time calculating Tesla's gross margin per car, and here are his numbers. Pause if you'd like to take a look for a little bit longer. And now here is a Tesla stock prediction from someone who is supposedly really credible and really respected on Wall Street.
It's 209 right now. So at what price do you say, you know what? I've made the money. I'm good.
Where do other companies trade right now, Guy, on a multiple basis? Listen, I know we're going to talk to Dan in a second, but I think if it gets back below 100, or towards 100. I'll probably take some off. But I
100.
think it's going to $50.
No, look,
$50.
I can make a better. Listen, okay, and I've been.
Does the world collapse around it
No,
as it goes to $50?
I've said this whole cycle that we'll know that the market's corrected when Tesla finally caves, when Tesla finally gives in. I have nothing against it. I just think it's being valued incorrectly. I think it's an auto company.
Listen, I think it goes back to what I was saying about those other parts of the business. Like, again, I think if it goes down to $100, which it was trading at in January, it's probably a buy there. You know what I mean? You weren't pressing it at $100 in January. I wasn't, but I started when it got back to like 140 before that Q4 print in January. And I think the most important thing, every quarter that they have reported this year, the fundamentals have been deteriorating. It's that simple.
When Dan Nathan says that it's a good time to buy Tesla stock and you're saying, no, it's going to go even lower than that. Yeah, you are probably going to be really wrong. Dan Nathan wants to buy some Tesla stock at $100 basically, but this other guy thinks that it will go down to $50. Dan earlier said that his Tesla stock price target was $69. Now that's a little while ago, but it never got there. So speaking about this guy that says Tesla stock will go down to $50, Dan Ives though says that he is one of the smartest investors on the street. We disagree on Tesla, but always highly respect his opinion.
Tesla is the most egregious thing I've ever seen. If I combined all the subprime mortgage companies, put them together with a cherry on top, it would be Tesla. So I don't understand the dislocation or the lack of connectivity for balance sheet work and earnings quality from demagoguery. So I hate to go back to it, but it's at the forefront of my mind, and it really encompasses everything I think that's potentially wrong in corporate America. And it's a real danger when people follow a person and an idea and put billions of dollars into it. So buyer beware.
Now that sounded really scary. Him saying all of these things about Tesla and Dan Ives giving him props. I mean, 2008 was absolutely horrific and terrible, and him comparing that to Tesla basically, wow. He sounded really convinced too. He didn't say, oh, maybe, you know, it's like this, there's a possibility. No, he committed to it fully. And so we will find out if he's right, except we don't need to wait to find out if he's right about what he just said, because he said that 4 years ago. I am not kidding. I am being very serious. This was 4 years ago, and Tesla has gone up a lot since then. So speaking specifically about Tesla, this guy has about this much credibility. He wasn't just wrong about Tesla. He was so confident that he was right that he made that comparison to the 2008 crisis. I think it's one thing to be wrong, but to be this confident and then be wrong and then double down on what you were basically predicting, sort of, that's just embarrassing. At least now, from that short clip on TV, he's not implying that Tesla or Elon Musk are committing fraud, which before, you know, he was getting in there. So at least he has made some progress. My friend just canceled his Model 3 order due to the ongoing union strike against Tesla in Sweden. I assume it is his Swedish friend. He's afraid that if he's in an accident, he cannot have his car fixed. Every unionized company, which is many in Sweden, is blocked from working on Tesla cars, from paint shops to body shops, and even the postal service has stopped delivering mail to Tesla. It's been 2 weeks now, and the current fear among the car owners is that Tesla will leave Sweden, leaving the 50,000 Tesla owners. But Tesla keeps sending out messages like this through the Tesla app, reading, "We are still here. Our sales, service technicians, and mobile rangers are still available and ready to help you." They have 9 Tesla service centers in Sweden, but they only do service and guarantee work. They are not the ones who fix your car if it's crashed. And technically they are also on strike, but most people just show up anyway. At least supposedly that's what's happening. To people who keep complaining about my friend being a bad driver, he is. But that's not the point. You do realize that accidents can happen even if it's not your fault, right? For example, a Honda rear ends you. Gosh, if there Only was a place filled with videos of that. Yeah, wham bam Tesla can, they have a lot of those. It's a legitimate concern. But Sweden is a relatively small market for Tesla, so it's not really that important. It only has 10 million people. So I think more likely Tesla will do everything it can to avoid having its employees unionized, because the price of not being able to sell in Sweden effectively is not that high, but the price of potentially this unionization effort spreading into other countries where Tesla operates would be not great. And most people will not go like, oh yeah, 90% of the people in Sweden are in some sort of a union, basically under a collective agreement. So, our country is different, so we're not going to try to unionize. No. I don't think that's what would happen. I think people would try to use that as an example. Oh, Tesla's employees unionize in Sweden. Why can't we unionize here? So I think Tesla is trying as hard as it can to avoid this from happening. Billionaire Tesla stock investor Ron Barron has made so much money investing in Tesla stock, and he also made money investing in SpaceX, and he thinks that SpaceX is going to be bigger than even Tesla in terms of potential returns. I am personally highly interested in SpaceX and Starlink, so let's dive a little bit deeper into it.
The massive number of anticipated satellites has also led to fears of a proliferation of debris, which some experts worry may eventually render large parts of Earth's orbit unusable. And then there's the potential risk to people on Earth as satellites are deorbited. In the past, SpaceX has said the lifetime of a Starlink satellite is about 5 years, which means satellites must be frequently replaced to maintain service. A recent report by the Federal Aviation Administration, which is responsible for issuing launch licenses for satellites in the US, and nonprofit research group the Aerospace Corporation, predicted that by 2035, Starlink satellites would account for 85% of the risk to aviation and people on the ground from falling space junk. The report went on to say that by 2035, if Starlink satellites did not fully burn up in the atmosphere before falling back to Earth as designed, the FAA expects one person on the planet to be killed or injured every 2 years as a result of Starlink satellite debris. In a letter dated October 9, 2023, SpaceX disputed the report, saying that the report relied on, quote, a deeply flawed analysis that falsely characterizes reentry disposal risks associated with Starlink. The letter went on to say that a lack of knowledge, a flawed methodology, and an over-reliance on outdated data contributed to, quote, distorted analysis that makes preposterous, unjustified, and inaccurate claims regarding Starlink disposal risks to people on the ground and to aviation, and requested that the FAA, quote, correct its report to Congress.
SpaceX's response to the FAA analysis really centered on the data that was underlying the report, and pointed to the fact that not only was the data from satellites that were not Starlink, but also that the company's own track record shows that Starlink satellites completely burn up when they enter the Earth's atmosphere.
This sounds to me a lot like, oh, you know what? EVs catch on fire so much. And we know this because we looked at the data of all of the vehicles that catch on fire. And the vehicles that are powered by gasoline, they catch on fire so much. So therefore, EVs also catch on fire a lot. So yeah, stop selling EVs. I think if you study satellites, you want to study SpaceX satellites because they are going to be different.
Starlink's success, many believe, is closely tied to SpaceX's other major undertaking, Starship. SpaceX hopes to use the massive next-generation reusable rocket to launch cargo, people, and a lot more satellites. But development of the rocket has hit a number of delays.
In order for SpaceX to keep Starlink on that hockey stick-like growth that it's seen so far, the company needs Starship to begin flying. Starship is a much larger and more powerful rocket than the current method that SpaceX uses to get its Starlink satellites into orbit, which are its Falcon 9 rockets. To meet both the expansion of the network by launching more and more satellites into orbit, as well as replace aging satellites over time, SpaceX needs Starship flying regularly to be able to meet that overall growth trajectory.
Oh yeah, it's like people saying 12 years ago that batteries are way too expensive and are never going to be cheap enough for mass adoption of EVs to take place, and that, even though then a few years later, batteries got cheaper, they then said, oh, the semis, electric semis are never going to come because the more batteries you add, the heavier a vehicle overall gets. Therefore, it's just not really possible. Physically, it's impossible for semis to be commercially viable, basically said Bill Gates, and he was terribly wrong. Elon is basically doing something very similar with SpaceX as well, building a smaller rocket and then building a bigger rocket. I personally believe that Starship is going to succeed.
Competition in the consumer satellite internet market has also been heating up. One service that's expected to be a big challenger is Amazon's Project Kuiper, which launched the first of its satellite prototypes in October. Amazon plans to begin beta testing its network with customers by the end of 2024.
Amazon is adopting a similar approach in terms of its vertical integration, manufacturing the satellites, to a certain extent launching them themselves through an affiliated company, Blue Origin. And they'll be making their own user terminals and leveraging their e-commerce platform to deliver these pieces of equipment and services remotely to the same swath of users as Starlink.
In the future, you will see much more of these types of LEO broadband internet systems. It provides a tremendous amount of flexibility and mobility, and that is tremendously powerful, not just for national security, but to connect disadvantaged populations, rural populations that don't have that kind of connectivity today.
So that's going to be another version of competition is coming for SpaceX and Starlink. Anyway, SpaceX is really interesting to me. Starlink is really fascinating. I own the product myself, and it works incredibly well. And I think in the long term, Elon Musk is actually more serious about SpaceX than he is about Tesla. He's very serious about Tesla, but he's even more serious about SpaceX, is what I believe. One simple reason for that is that it is going to take a lot longer to colonize Mars than it is going to take to transition our vehicles to EVs. And YouTube says you should watch this video next, but if you haven't finished watching this video, watch this one first. My name is Matt Pocius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.